One of my favorite entrepreneurs is joining the show today. Nancy Tedeschi, you've been on the show quite a few years ago, I think about 4 years ago, talking about Pickleball Bella and starting this new company. So I wanted to have you on again to talk in more detail about your entrepreneurship, the pitfalls and the triumphs you've experienced over the several years you've been doing this. So thanks for coming back on the show.
You're welcome. Great to see you, Lisa.
Good to see you this way. Okay, so I want to just give people an overview of you. You and I met in our community here in Wenatchee, even though you're coming to me from Florida right now. Met you when you were heavily involved in promoting and developing SnapIt Screw, which is the eyeglass screw that you invented it's long and you screw it in the glasses and then you just snap it off.
Correct.
And I'm guessing almost every optometrist had wished they thought of it.
And they did, and they're all using it now. So,
and so you solved a problem, which is, how a lot of people start a business. They're solving a problem. But you also struggled with that company. For one, it wasn't something you were completely passionate about, but also there were a lot of pitfalls along the way. You and I are friends, so I've heard about them over the years. Let's just start when we let's talk about patents. I have a design patent, so a lot of people ask me questions about patents. I always tell them they need to talk to you because you have been through a lot. Let's talk about when someone comes to you and say, hey, I have this idea, I want to get a patent. And you say, well, it's not that simple. Talk to us about the process. And I know you ended up getting probably more patents throughout the world than you wished you'd had now that you probably didn't need. What would be the easy way to explain to people this patent, like the importance of it, or stay as far away from it and be first to market?
Right. And navigating the system is, and there's a lot to learn about navigating the patent system. If you have an idea and it's patentable, people think, okay, I'm going to get a patent and I'll be protected, right? That's the logical, that's what you think is going to happen. Well, the thing they don't tell you is that even if you get a patent and some big company comes in and decides that they want your product, you got to have, in this country, at least $1 million of your own money to fight the fight in court. The system is very broken in the United States. Now, I have a patent in China, and I've utilized the court system there, and it cost me $30,000.
But it's still going to cost money. So let's talk about that, because we're talking about a utility patent. So a utility patent is the utility, the use of something, how it functions.
Exactly.
Design patent is more just how a design is your own that could be easily tweaked with just a simple variation. So it's not as ironclad as a utility patent.
Correct.
So a utility patent is quite expensive. I mean, we don't have to give your dollars away in terms of exactly what you spent, but you're talking about $1 million to protect your patent in the United States. And it was thousands of dollars to get the patent.
And not only was it thousands of dollars, sometimes some of the questions people should be asking if they're actually communicating with a patent lawyer, they'll say, oh, we'll do it for $10,000. Well, what are they actually saying they're going to do for $10,000? Are they going to write that patent and submit it, and that's it? Because the issues come after you submit it, because more than likely the patent office is going to reject your patent at least 2 or 3 times. And every time that happens, your lawyer has to respond. Here's another 5,000, here's another 5,000. So they don't tell you that up front. At least I didn't get told that up front. So, a good question to be asking is, okay, if they say $10,000, what does that cover? Does that cover the whole patent from the time you apply to all the office actions that come back at you until the time of which you either get a rejection or an approval? That process I don't mind telling you how much I spent. I spent $250,000 on patents, but that's from all over the world because Nancy thought I had such a great idea that I needed to protect it everywhere. But in retrospect, and what I've learned is that's not necessarily the case.
For you, looking back, and this is different for everyone, so we're not giving blanket advice here. We're just saying, for you specifically, where would you have thought you, looking back, you really needed the patent?
The place where I manufacture the product and the place that I live.
So those two countries.
And not even necessarily that. So in particular, my screw is made in China. And the only reason it's made in China, because I, like most people, wanted everything to be done in this country. But when push came to shove and you realize the difference in the cost, it was 6 times the amount of money to make it in the United States as it was to make it in China. So, you know, everybody's afraid to go to China with their patent and their intellectual property because they're afraid it's going to get ripped off. But had I had the knowledge I had now, I would probably have only gotten a patent in China and in the US because, and I don't even know if I would have done it in the US, to be honest with you, because if I have it in China and it's 6 times cheaper for me to make it in China, they can't send it out of China to the United States because I have a patent. So if they want to make it in the United States, they're never going to compete with me because I'm going to be so much lower in price.
Plus the money you spent defending your patent here, you could have been spending on your product and distribution and all those things.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, you know, and then just really solid foundation for China and making sure my patent was as strong as I could there. It can't leave China. Unless I let it leave China.
Well, and I think it's a good lesson too for you, what in talking about, yes, of course you want it to be made in the United States, and we're not suggesting that people don't do that. I think first to market products, you know, if that's all, when I say first to market, meaning you're not going to get a patent, you have an idea that's probably been done in some variation and you're not reinventing the wheel. So maybe you're just first to market, which we'll talk about in your next company. And so then in that case, maybe it can be made here. Maybe it can be made even by contractors who live in this country. But for your case, you'd already spent $250,000 developing the product and, well, just getting the patents, not even to say what you spent developing the product. And then now you need to make some of that money back to stay in business. Now, you also chose later, let's take a break and I want to get to the next part, the next phase of your company. So you had the patents, you were literally, I've seen you at your house, literally shipping screws to different places yourself or hiring local students to work for you to do that. And then came an idea or time to decide about licensing the product. And licensing is an option as well. So let's take a break and we'll talk about that when we come back. We're talking with Nancy Tedeschi. Did I say your name at the beginning? I don't know if I did.
You did.
Nancy Tedeschi we're talking with, and we'll be back in just a moment. We're back talking with Nancy Tedeschi. We talked in the first part of the show about just patents, your choice to get a patent, your choice to have your product made in China. And then let's talk about licensing now. Some people have an idea and think, well, I read a book I remember years ago about just licensing your product, not even getting a patent. You chose to build the company first so that your licensing agreement would be more lucrative because you had proof of sale, proof of all of the things that need to go along with getting a better deal. So at what juncture in your business did you decide, okay, I'm ready to license, and how did you get there?
Well, you know.
I know, but I want them to know.
So just because you have a great idea and you have a patent doesn't mean that it turns into marketability. I always tell everybody that the idea is the easy part. The rest of it is the tough part.
Right.
So how I got to licensing, it's funny because I went to a trade show and I met this guy named Stephen Key, and he is the guru of licensing in the United States, and he has several books out. And he met me before I decided that I was going to build my company. And we were at a trade show and he saw my screw and he walked up to me and he goes, "Who are you going to have to license this?" And I go, I'm not going to license it. I'm going to bring it to my market myself. And he looked at me and he goes, you're out of your mind. And I didn't know at the time what out of my mind meant.
Now you do.
It's kind of a joke with him and I now, because I go, yeah, you're right. Had I known then what I know now, I would have licensed it. You got to be careful about licensing, though, because who you license to, if it's not protected, then they can take your idea from you.
So looking back, would you have licensed before you built the company if you had it to do again?
No.
You would have still done it the way you did it.
Only because of the education that I got.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's no other reason. I mean, I hated the process. You know, I was miserable. It was not fun. I don't like screws. It just fell into my life.
That darn screw.
God gave me a good idea and I capitalized on it. And it wasn't anything I was passionate about. My mother broke her glasses, asked me to fix them. An hour later, I was trying to fix them and couldn't do it. So I thought of a better way. Most people get all crazy and go, oh, look what I did about that. I am not that kind of an entrepreneur. It was not fun, and it was, but as far as licensing goes, I have ideas now that I would absolutely license and not do any of the work that I did with SnapIt.
You've actually given a couple of ideas to other people to run with, and you just take a percentage of whatever happens.
Yeah, I actually gave an idea recently to Stetson University, to the entrepreneurship program there to the kids. And it's a great idea. I think it's as good as my screw, but I don't want anything to do with it. And it is kind of funny that, but I would never be saying this had I not lived the first round.
Right.
And then eventually today we'll talk about my new round,
right,
which I am passionate about.
Yes.
So I think licensing now, for me, yes, in a heartbeat, I would do it before I did anything.
So just so that we're clear, the audience understands, licensing means you let somebody else handle all aspects of the company. They are licensed to do so, and they pay you a licensing fee. So you make residual income for the rest of that agreement on the screw that you invented over a decade ago.
Yeah. And sometimes it's better to have a patent and then get a license.
Right. Because it's worth more. You've already done all that work and they know it.
Exactly. And, just getting the patent, the fees don't go away. There's renewal fees. I just paid $3,080 2 days ago on one of my patents to keep it alive. So the whole time you have the patent for the 20 years, there are renewal fees at certain periods of that patent. So they just keep on getting you and getting you and getting you.
And what happens at the end of the 20 years?
Well, with me, I still own SnapIt because I trademarked SnapIt. Mm-hmm. So that name is mine forever. Yes. So anybody who's going to take off and and start making it, they can't call it SnapIt. So they're going to have to remarket it unless they come to me for the use of the name.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk just one more thing before we take a break, and then we get into the new company you have that you're incredibly passionate about, that makes all the headache worth it. And I text you this morning and I said, can we go about 15 minutes later today? Because I have an attention headache and I woke up like this and I needed to just kind of decompress. I needed a little extra time, hot shower and all that helps me. And I've been reaching out to you more often lately. I've been an entrepreneur for many years, and entrepreneur means different things to different people. Sometimes you're an entrepreneur who has ideas and those ideas are sponsored and you go out and bring those ideas to fruition. Whatever the case may be, there's all different definitions. You could own a local coffee shop. You could, whatever it is, if you're in business for yourself. And I'm in this new endeavor that I haven't really shared with this audience much, but I will, about creating a space for patients and caregivers in a community app and through an online course. It doesn't exist. It hasn't been done in the way that I've done it, which sounds really exciting and shiny, but it also means it doesn't exist. It hasn't been done, and you have to figure it out as you go. And I think that hearing from people like you who have figured it out as you go along and have made money, but had to spend money, it makes us think about do we have an extra thousands of dollars lying around to get a patent? Maybe we don't. So what are the other options? Licensing, is that an option? Maybe it is better to be an entrepreneur that owns a coffee shop on the corner. It's all about fulfilling the dream you have so that going to work maybe doesn't feel as difficult and complicated as you going to work every day when you were dealing with that screw. Would you say that going to work every day now for you is completely different, even though you still have headaches as an entrepreneur?
Oh, absolutely. When you love what you do, there's a different story. And one of the things that I look back at with that screw, as much as I make fun of it, I wish I would have enjoyed the process, because most of the time I was a nervous wreck because I was putting all my money into it. I wasn't seeing anything coming out of it. And, I thought I had the greatest idea in the world, and I just couldn't get it to the market. It was just like a roadblock. And so I was always stressed, always stressed. I was upset all the time. And looking back on it now, if I would have had just a little bit of more fortitude and trust in myself and my own abilities, and learn to enjoy the avenue, even failure, to me, failure is not bad. And I think we've conditioned people to think that failure is bad, but failure is actually the way we learn the best. So when we're in a failure, quote, failure, we have to learn to see what we're taking out of that failure. Like some of the things that I failed at, I look back at now and got the most out of it. So now when I'm going through a difficult time now as an entrepreneur, and especially when I think I'm failing at something, I stop, I take a breath, and I'm like, this is a lesson. What is this lesson? It doesn't always have to be negative. So now I try to teach, when I'm teaching at Stetson, the entrepreneur kids there, I try to teach them that failure is good. And that's so different than what we've been taught. But if you look at your own lives and you look at the failures, you look back at them and see how much they made you grow. So we all have to learn to relax in failure.
It's like ending up in a relationship that isn't suiting you and making the choice. It's like you learn then that's not the kind of person that's for me. And so let's not make that same choice again. It's the same with all kinds of things. The kind of job you choose, if that doesn't fit you and you go looking for another job, you don't go looking for the same exact job, maybe. Right. It's all of the things that make us feel like, why are we here? What is the work we're meant to do? And how do we get close to that in a reasonable amount of time? Because it does take time. How long ago did you have that idea?
2008.
So a long time ago, 15 years.
Yeah.
Let's take a break and let's share with everyone. Again, we talked about your company when you were on the show several years ago, but we want to update everyone about the success of Pickleball Bella. We'll be back in just a moment. We are wrapping up with Nancy Tedeschi talking about entrepreneurship, patents, licensing, and being passionate about the work that's going to be really hard, whether you love it or not. So you might as well love it. So that's how we get to Pickleball Bella. You don't have a patent for this, but you are the first to market with a clothing label in pickleball. Who hasn't heard in the world? Right. Who hasn't heard of pickleball at this point? And here's the interesting part about you and how smart you are in business. You saw it coming because you saw people gravitating toward pickleball. Tell us about that. We have just a couple minutes, but your idea to design this clothing label came from your passion for pickleball and seeing everyone else's passion for it.
Yeah, so I started playing the game and would go to the courts. I pretty much had retired, and I would go to the courts and play pickleball, and I'd look around and I said, everybody looked like tennis players. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, how can I change this? And so I actually thought of the idea of coming out with a labeled pickleball clothing line that when you wear it, you're a pickleball player because everything is themed pickleballs, So I started it, and I have such a passion for the game and growing the game, and the sport is getting huge now, as everybody knows. And I'm still the only one that puts themes of pickleball into their clothing line. And I've not only done skirts, what I started with just skirts, and now I do handbags and pickleball bags and hats and visors and matching tops. And I just came out with 3 new pickleball paddles that actually match the skirts. So it's almost like a lifestyle brand. Instead of just a clothing brand, it's like a lifestyle brand, and women go nuts for it. I have done 0 advertising, 0.
So you had the idea to design the clothing. You now play pickleball, you travel and do shows and, get a booth at different tournaments and do all the things. So you're playing and you're selling. You have a website that sells so much every single day, every single week, every single month. I know that you have a deal that you've shared with me that we don't necessarily have to share here that could be incredibly lucrative for you in the end, because you have an exit strategy with this company.
Right.
And what is your advice?
And I'm selling a lot on Dick's Sporting Goods, and they came to me.
Yeah.
Before, with my screw, I was knocking on Walmart's door, Walgreens doors, begging for somebody to talk to me. And though it was a great idea, it's not that easy to do. I was sitting at my desk one day and got an email from Dick's Sporting Goods wanting to know if I'd be interested in selling my clothing line. And now if you go to Dick's Sporting Goods and you put in pickleball skirts, see how much you see of Pickleball Bella. And it's just, and it's like to be, and I've done, it's all grassroots. I told you that. I go to at least 2 tournaments a month. I travel all over the United States, soon to be international. And I meet the people that I do business with. And so, I never judge a show by how much money I make, because if I make 100 sales, those 100 people are going back to their home courts. And as soon as that happens, then you get more and more and more and more. Now, there is never a tournament that I go to that I don't see my clothes walking around.
Well, I look at your face now, how it's changed from you're happy to be here talking about entrepreneurship, but you light up when you're talking about Pickleball Bella, which is named after your dog, Bella. And just
everything is, all my prints are copyrighted. And I think that's an important thing to say. Also going through the trademark and copyright office, all my designs are copyrighted. So nobody can actually steal my design. I mean, like you said, they can tweak it and put balls on skirts and stuff, but they can't do my exact design. And I was first to market, so people know my brand.
Well, we're definitely going to have you back. We're out of time here. We could go on and on, but I want to have you back in the future, more great advice, and let us know what that exit strategy ends up being when you do sell the company. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.